To introduce you to hip, knee and ankle stability exercises. And the reason that I'm packaging them up is because it's very unlikely that you can have problems in one area and not the other. So it's unlikely that you have problems with your back without problems with your hip, problems with your knees without problems with your feet. So the best idea is to tackle them as a group and make sure that you're strengthening the whole system, not just trying to strengthen isolated muscles, which we know doesn't help in the long term. Now, the important thing about doing these exercises is that they shouldn't hurt when you're doing them, nor should you feel wobbly or off balance or in any other way unsafe. It's better if they hurt to do them little and often. So if something hurts, cut back just a little bit. And this might sound counterintuitive, but I'd suggest that rather than just 3 times a day, then do them 5 times a day. Because you're not trying to strengthen or build endurance at this point. You're trying to sometimes learn new patterns, and the brain only learns new patterns with a little and often action. And it's also sometimes we run counter to the belief that it has to hurt to be good. That is so not true, because when you experience pain, either pain while you're doing the exercises or an ache afterwards, that pain's telling you that it's probably your body is actually cutting down on stability and losing strength. So pain is not good for you. There are some instances where I encourage people to push through pain, but it's actually quite rare. And in all of these exercises, they should not hurt. Better to do little, often and shorter pain to really maximize the best effect. Now, just to start with, I'm going to look at sitting, and it's been so interesting for me to look at myself on videos, because what I realize is that I sit to one side with my shoulders like that. So just for pelvic and hip stability, practice sitting with your weight evenly on both sides. And I'll talk more about this in a video I'm going to do on posture. The first exercise I'm going to do is simply standing up straight, which can be harder than it sounds, because many of us have developed habitual patterns over the years of letting our hips go to one side when we stand. And to correct that, you just stand up tall, pull your hips in, moving them sideways, and feel what that's like. Might feel a little bit strange, and then relax. Up tall and relax. Now, probably useful to go to the other side, feel what that feels like, over to that side, up tall, and just get that feeling of your weight evenly through your pelvis and into your knees. Now, when we have these habits, you can't change them overnight, so practice this one little and often. It might be that you practice it 5 times a day, just whenever you stand up, you get up tall. You can make it a little bit harder, or if this one was too easy, by simply just going a little bit further to the side, a little bit further to the side, making sure that your shoulders are still level, they're not dropping, and you're just getting your weight on your leg and your weight on your other leg. People often ask me, when you're putting your weight on your leg, should your knee be straight or bent? And the answer is that for most of us, without thinking, when we put a weight on the leg, it's slightly bent. And that's only a problem if someone's had a stroke or something and their knee flicks back or hyperextends. So you're not locking it back straight, you're just putting it in its natural position of power, which is just very slightly bent as you do the movement side to side. Now, to check whether you've got your balance evenly through your hips and through stable trunk, have a look at the wall behind. So I've got a white wall behind. As I drop my arms, if my hip is inclined towards the right, I lose a little bit of that space between my arms and my waist. So as I pull up tall, now you can see, hopefully, that I've got fairly even space between my arms and my hips. And again, it's not something you might want to suddenly overcorrect or do for too long. You just practice it little and often till it becomes habitual and you've got good stability through your trunk and your hips. If you feel that you can go side to side and feel that your hips are stable as you put your weight on the right, it's not collapsing, you're even and it doesn't hurt, then you can make the exercise slightly more difficult by, as you go to the right, lift up your right arm. And what this is encouraging is giving you a trunk elongation. It's preventing you collapsing down on that side. It's value adding because it's adding in another exercise as well. Of course, if your arms are sore, you might not go quite so far. You might just stretch like this that makes it a little bit easier, and I'm lifting up my foot as I'm doing it. But what I'm really making sure that I'm not doing is letting my hips slide, or I'm not wobbling to the side. All right, so we've just practiced getting the balance and stability through your hip. I'm going to get you now to practice getting a bit more stability through your knee. So I'm going to do what we often call a calf stretch, but the aim is not on stretching to start with. We're just going to get a little bit of stability happening over your knees. So start with your feet together, toes facing forward. And it's important to check that your toes keep facing forward, because people tend to do this by swinging their foot out and then going forward. And if you look at me sideways, I'm keeping my back up tall and I'm not leaning forward into it. And as I put my weight forward onto my left knee, I'm just getting some weight through my knee, and my back heel is lifting slightly. So as I go forward, weight through my right knee, heel just lifting slightly. And then you want to just make that a little bit faster so that you're getting a sudden movement through it, helping to wake up the muscle. And if you want to value add in that exercise, you'd go with your opposite hand up, opposite hand up, opposite hand up. So now I'm practicing getting some trunk stability and a little bit of rotation through my trunk, and I'm waking up my knee muscles and making sure that my knee is working in line with my toe. And I'm going to stop doing that now and add in more of what we call a traditional stretch. So starting toes touching, heels touching, facing forward, right foot goes forward. Make sure that my knee is over my toe. I'm going to bend that knee. This time I'm going to just loosen up slightly my knee behind and then lock it back. And as you lock it back, you should be feeling a stretch at the back of your knee, and change. Don't hold a stretch for long, because if your muscles aren't used to stretching and you suddenly stretch them out, they can create an ache or pain. So you better to just do for 4 seconds, 5 seconds to start with, and as you get more confident you can go for longer. There's no point in a long stretch, so it's not achieving very much. Toes touching, heels touching, other leg goes forward, knee over your toe, arch your back up tall, and loosen your knee, and then firmly lock it so you feel a stretch at the back of your knee. Now, the thing about that is that often if your knee feels unstable or feels like it's going to give way on you, sometimes it can be because that calf muscle is just that little bit tight and it's being overprotective, and a gentle stretch like this can actually make your knee feel a lot better. But of course, everybody's different. There's not one miracle exercise for everybody. You have to just work out if that's something that you need to do. But there's never any harm in doing the calf warm up and then the calf stretch like that. If you feel unsteady, you'd use your chair to do it. Right, I'm just going to practice some balance exercise. So I've got my finger on the chair to start with, and I'm going to put my weight on my left hip, so travel weight over slightly, however it goes, and I'm going to lift my right foot off. But what I'm going to do is just touch the right toe gently onto the ground like that. 3, 2, 1. My fingers come up if I feel confident. Now I'm going to put my weight on my right leg, travel my hip weight over slightly, take my toe back, touch lightly, and only if I feel confident lifting my hand like this. So this is just a beginner's way to practice balance, but if you do it looking in the mirror or on the video, you're making sure that you're doing it and you're not losing any of that hip stability. Your hip's not traveling too far when you do it like that. So you often see, or I often see people who've been practicing one leg balance and doing TheraBands and weights and all sorts of things, but they're doing it like that. And inadvertently, that's training poor hip stability. So just these small little actions can help train up stability. One of the reasons that I like to encourage people to use the toe touch is because, especially with the younger kids, if you want to do it 5 times a day, you're going to have to integrate it into your normal daily activities. It's not like you're going to set aside time just to do balance exercises. So it might be that for the kids, I say, when you're at school, stand, touch your desk perhaps, and when you're chatting to somebody, stand on one leg with your toe touching. And if you feel confident about it, you can do that on the train station and nobody would even notice what you're doing. You just got your toe touching like that, toe touching like that. Now, I don't recommend that everybody do that. If you feel like your balance is precarious, you would not be doing this in public. But if you feel safe and you just want to practice it a little and often, it might be that you touch the supermarket checkout bench, just a light toe touch like this. Nobody really knows what you're doing. You're just gradually touching and just doing a little bit of up tall stability work, and just every so often catch yourself, because what I did was catch myself then is going forward. So it's up, touch, and back. Right, I'm now going to add in some rotation. So what often happens is that people come to see me and they feel unstable in their hips or their knees or their ankles, and it can be that they've actually done some gym work or they've worked through some exercise regime or a class where they've concentrated on getting stability, but they haven't added in rotation and twist into the systems. And it's understandable why so much focus is put on making sure that you've got that stability that way, but really in real life, you need to be able to twist and rotate or walk on uneven ground or run through an oval that's got a little bit of uneven ground where you suddenly do have to do that. And you want to make sure that your muscles are stable and able to be controlled in those positions that are a little bit more awkward. So it's important to introduce those rotation actions early in the piece, because ultimately you're looking at long-term function. And so your exercises have to have that functional goal in mind. So to do that, what I'm going to do is again pull up tall, make sure that my pelvis is evenly over my feet, not to one side or to the other. So there we are, up tall again. And I'm going to bend my arms here so you can see how far I rotate. So by just, I'm going to keep my head still for this and just rotate through 30 degrees through my trunk and through my hips. And that rotation is going down through to my feet. So I want you to feel as you do that, you can feel your toes moving. So as I go to the right, I've got the weight on the outside of my right foot. As I go to the left, the weight's on the outside of my left foot. But my heels are staying on the ground and I'm just getting a very gentle rotation. I'll drop the arms now because I just want to see now that you've got your tummy in and your core muscles are engaged, as they say. So they're up tall and you're getting that gentle rotation. Now, if when you twist you feel a pain in your knee or your hip or your ankles, just don't go so far. So cut it back and do just the slightest movement, because you're retraining muscles that are being overprotective and they hurt, they don't want you to do that twist, and you have to say to those muscles, kindly and over maybe a period of several weeks, you can do it guys, you can take a bit of a twist. And so it's just gently doing that. Again, my knees are technically they're straight, but they've got just the slightest little bend in them as I do that, and they're just moving backwards and forwards like that. Now the reason I'm keeping my head forward and doing that rotation movement is because, first of all, you can see the video. Secondly, if you have any problems with balance or a problem because you perhaps had an ear infection or a vestibular problem, if you turn your head like that, that can create dizziness. If you keep your head still and just rotate your trunk through 30 degrees, it's actually quite soothing for your neck and shoulders. So there's another bit of value-added exercise into that. And we're going to progress these. So in the next series of videos, I'm going to make these exercises harder and harder and harder. But again, if this hurt or felt uncomfortable, just work on this exercise maybe 5 times a day until it feels easy. And it might take a week, it might take several. Just little and often, short of pain, work on this until we can get you to go further and to make it more challenging. Okay, another important exercise that invariably people overlook is just a very slight knee bend. So while we all want to build up to doing full squats and squats with weights, sometimes you just have to start right at the beginning and make sure that you've got good knee control just for the smallest movements. So turning sideways, I'm just going to show you doing it like this. It's just slight knee bend. And I'm keeping my heels on the ground because I'm not going too far. So keeping your heels on the ground stops you traveling too far, and you just really want that control. If I turn around again, it's knees over toes and your pelvis in a stable and steady position as you go down. Now, if going that far hurts, you just go this far. It's just a tiny movement. So you really want to practice what you can do without pain, and then incrementally, gradually over the next few weeks even, go further and further, and then we'll progress that to doing it on one leg down the line. Now, if you find that you're inclined to bend forward, and that can be because you've been practicing squats or with that sort of action, which is useful for some exercises, but it's not what I'm getting you to do here today. I'm getting you to do straight down, and that will become apparent with the next series of exercise. If you find that you're leaning forward, go back towards the wall. Don't have your heels against the wall, just slightly forward of the wall, chin in, up tall, and then bend down, keeping your shoulders and your bottom touching. And that way it stops that inclination to bend forward. And I've had to work with quite a few people who find that very hard to go straight down. So the wall's quite good. And if you like, you can value add that exercise by putting a small ball in your back, which gives your back a little bit of a massage, up and down like that. Again, 5 times a day would be ideal, but if you can't, 5 times, 3 times a day. And whenever you're standing, just having a break from sitting at the desk or whatever, just some small knee bends, or when you're waiting in a queue, hardly noticeable. You just be doing these tiny knee bends, waking up those knee muscles and getting them ready for the harder exercises that we're going to progress to. It's always a good idea to work your quads by getting up and down out of a chair. If your knees are sore, you start with a very high chair, such as a bar stool. That makes it easier. Or put a cushion in an ordinary chair. So up and down 5 times. As you come up, pull yourself up tall and make sure that you're always getting out of a chair with your hips steady in the right position over your knees and not to one side. So it's good to do this looking at a mirror and check to make sure that you're coming up evenly, not with your hips swayed. Again, to make it harder, you just go to a lower chair and up and tall and down and up and tall and down. Lean forward, up, pull yourself up tall. And again, 5 times a day is ideal. And then as that gets easy, you build up to doing it maybe 10 times, 3 times a day. So the number of times that you do all these exercises very much depends on your level of pain. So always remember the little and often rule is best to start with, because then you don't risk overloading muscles, doing too much, creating pain. You know you're safe, you know that you can progress. So you can always go forward by doing too little and building up. But if you do too much to start with, that just creates pain and sets you back. And pain, remember, is linked to instability. So pushing through pain doesn't help you. It's best to do exercises that are functional. So if you want to regain stability in walking or playing sport, it's best to have the exercises that aim towards that goal. However, we can't be upright doing exercises all day long. So if you're working at your desk, there are some things that you can do underneath the desk. One of the things I really like to encourage is people just to keep moving like this. And the reason is that it just keeps the muscles warmed and loosen up, because if you sit there very still for long periods, sometimes if there's a bit of inflammation in the system, it can mean that joints freeze when you first go to stand up, and that's where you notice the pain in your knees, hips, ankles or back. So just some slight movement. And the other thing that I really like to encourage is just knee locking. And knee locking is a really good stability exercise. Remember I said that when you stand and when you're normally walking, you always have this tiniest little bend in your knee. Sometimes if there's been a problem in the system, whether it's caused by pain or an injury or whatever, you lose that last bit of locking. And it could be somebody who's athletic, somebody who's playing sport at a high level. They'll just have a slight problem and they won't realise that that little bit of locking's lost. So it's good to practice it. How you do it in sitting is you put the weight on the back of your heel, loosen your knee up slightly, and then just gently engage this big muscle here, your quadriceps, to push the back of the knee down. And you should feel a stretch at the back there and relax. It's what we did in that calf warm up, so that also helped a locking action, but this one's using your quadriceps more to do it. So again, it's weight on the back of your heel, toes up towards your nose, loosen and then lock. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and relax. And I'm keeping my back slightly dipped when I do that. Loosen, toes back, lock. Now, the other thing that you can do, if that's too easy or you don't have any problems with the locking, then you can try lifting as well. So it's loosen, weight on the back of your heels, toes towards the nose, lock and lift slightly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and keep the lock and go down. Now, if you find that when you lock, as a slight bend happens in your knee like that, or a tremble, that means you've got what is called a quads lag, and that means that your big quadriceps muscle can't hold the straightening when you lift, so you need to go back and do lots of that kind of locking with your heel on the ground. So you practice, you might take a week or so to really get that thigh muscle quadriceps to engage. When you feel confident, you lock and lift. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and down. And legs are heavy things, so just working that up to 10 times is hard work. So again, I suggest doing it 5 times, perhaps 5 times a day, or whenever you can under the desk, but you really would be working to just doing it once or twice a day, 10 times. 10 times can be too hard to start with, that's why I say start with 5 and build up, always build up. I'm going to finish with an exercise that's actually a warm-up exercise, but the reason that I'm doing it at the very end is so that you can put into this exercise all the elements from the other one. And it's just a simple heel toe, so lifting heel toe, and opposite hand opposite to the knee, so that you get a little bit of trunk rotation as you're doing your warm-up. Now, as I said, most exercises should aim towards a functional end, so this exercise is a good warm-up for brisk walking and for running. Not everybody's going to aim to run, so it's excellent exercise if you can, but what we're really looking for here in this exercise is to make sure that you're not losing that hip stability as you run. So a lot of people are very keen to get back to running or aerobics or harder exercise, but they skip the step of practicing really good trunk and hip stability. So what I'll get you to do is practice all these exercises in front of a mirror, in front of a video, and aim towards getting those little small things right. The upright posture, the stability, the good knee control, and then maybe it'll take a week, maybe it'll take 2 weeks, but then hopefully by then I'll have another set of exercises ready for you as a progression.